Welcome to Salesforce Guru channel. Today we are going to discuss what is the Salesforce Apex triggers. So what is use of triggers? So when we need to use the triggers. So first we need to know what is use of trigger. So a trigger in Salesforce is nothing but it's a piece of code. So usually on certain events when you are executing, so if you want to do perform some custom actions, so then usually we will going to use the triggers. So these custom actions are nothing but while inserting the record, while updating the record, while deleting the record. So when you are doing this DML operations, so if you want to do some custom actions, so then usually we will go for the trigger. So if you see in interviews also, you will get most frequently questions on trigger and ask them to write a trigger. So you need to understand thoroughly in order to explain those scenarios. So what are the uses of trigger? So usually Salesforce give out of the box features. So if you are not able to do certain actions using the out of the box features, right? So you need to go for the customization. So this trigger is also one of the customization when it come under the customization. So uses of trigger is automation. So if you want to do some automations, usually we will go for the trigger and data validation. So if you before you are inserting data to the object, right? If you want to enforce some validation, so you can able to use triggers also for that one. And if you want to do some custom business logic, which is not possible through the out of the box features, so on object we will go for the triggers and the bulk records inserting, updating. So then usually we will use the triggers and integrations and custom notifications. So these are the some use cases. So where triggers come into picture. So we'll go one by one. So what are the different types of triggers we have? So usually we have two types of triggers in broader way. One is before trigger and one is the after trigger. So you need to understand when we need to use the before triggers, when we need to use the after trigger. So before trigger is something like so if you want to do some changes to the data before insert or update or delete, then you will have to go with the before. And if you want to do some actions after inserting or updating or deleting the data, then you need to go for the after execute. So so these are the some use cases. So in interview also they will give some scenarios to write, and you need to be you need to be aware that when to use the before trigger and when to use the after triggers. So these are the some use cases. So so if you are aware of these things, you very easy to write trigger scenarios. So before trigger, suppose you are doing some actions on the same object. So then usually we will use the before trigger. So for example, they ask to do some validations on the object before you are inserting the data, or if they want to set some default values before in the same object when you are inserting the record. So some custom validation, some default values, and you are updating the data on the same object. So then you are going with the before events. After events means, so usually so this is going to trigger after you inserting or updating or deleting the records. Once it reflected in the object. So for example, you are inserting some record. So based on that record, the related record you want to update. So in that such cases, right, you need to use the after trigger and sending the notification once you are inserting the record. So in such cases, you need to go for the after triggers. So these are the some cases. So based on your requirement you need to decide. So based on the use case they are giving, so you need to decide whether you need to go for the before trigger or after trigger. So what we are going to do in next sessions, we are going to take one example and we are going to implement that one. And so for how to write your own trigger, let's see. So for example, you want to create a trigger. So you can go to developer console. You can see file, navigate to file, new trigger. So here you can able to give your trigger name, account trigger. So on which object you want to create this one. So you want to create on the account, so select that one, submit. So it's going to give like a boiler code for the trigger. So if you want to write, you can write, you can declare a you can write your own custom class here, or logic, whatever you want inside. So the syntax will be like this one. So if you see, the trigger syntax will be like trigger, so that's why it's showing in a different color. So custom name, whatever you want to give your name, you can give. So on which object it is going to trigger, account. So here, what events you want to, so for example, you can give before insert. So if you want to trigger after insert, so you have to give separated by comma, like after insert. So I'm going with the before insert. So before insert, so here I want to put some logic, simple thing, just for testing purpose whether it will trigger or not. Inside, so I created my trigger. So if I go and create on account, insert here. So it got printed. So that means, so when I try to insert my account object, so immediately this trigger before insert, it will going to trigger. So if you want to write for after insert, so we can do it. So if you want to do some operation before insert, we can do in before insert. And if you want to do some operation after insert, after update or before update, you can write your own custom trigger. So in later session, we are going to discuss more details, like how to write your own custom validation using triggers, or how to use before trigger and after trigger. So thank you for your time.